There are growing concerns that the conflict between Hamas and Israel could spread to the entire region. Leaders of Hamas and Hizbollah, which is Lebanon's militant group, and also the Palestinian Islamic jihad have been meeting this week. Israel continues to bombard Gaza, with the death toll now estimated by authorities there to be at 6,500 dead. This recent conflict, of course, sparked by the horrific attack by Hamas on mostly Israeli civilians on October the 7th, which left 1,400 people dead. Over 200 people are still being held as hostages by Hamas. Though there is hope, more releases will come now that 4 people have been freed this week. But where does it all go from here? Let's get some insight from former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennet. Mr. Bennet served as Prime Minister under a coalition government for a year between June 2021 and 2022, and he joins us now from Jerusalem. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We do appreciate your time. You know, I want to speak to you first as a citizen of Israel, because it strikes me that what happened on October the 7th has hit at the heart of Israel, has hit at the psyche of every person living in Israel. How has it changed your country and your people?
You're absolutely right. This is a meaningful trauma for mothers, fathers, children across Israel, where, knowing that these monsters entered homes, tied families' hands behind their backs and slaughtered children in front of their parents, and then slaughtered the parents and burned people and raped young women. It's simply atrocities that we thought belonged to the Middle Ages and not to 2023. And Israel is a strong nation, and we are fighting back to defend ourselves. But it's going to take time, and it's going to take meaningful action on our part to restore our security.
What went wrong? Because, Israel is known across the world for having phenomenal intelligence service, for having a great defense force that is really top of its game. And I was reading up about this, that Egypt, and this is according to the US Republican Michael McCall, who's chair of the US House Foreign Affairs Committee, he confirmed that Egypt warned Israel 3 days before this attack. Why didn't Israel act to defend itself more?
That's something that we're going to need to understand, and you're absolutely right. There was a colossal intelligence failure here, and we have to fix it. I have to tell you that in global history, intelligence time and again fails to anticipate major events like Pearl Harbor, like Barbarossa, like 9/11, like Yom Kippur War. So there's only a limit to intelligence in terms of its fallibility. But we're going to have to fix this, and we are.
Tell me a little bit more about you. So you are a former Prime Minister between June 21 and 22. You've also got a military history, but you're also a tech multimillionaire. You've got roots in America and, of course, in Israel. Are you still actively involved in politics? When you say we have to fix this, what role do you play today in Israel?
Right now, I'm just a citizen of Israel and a very involved one, trying to help out wherever I can, to help with military units, to help with communities that have been destroyed by these murderers, to strengthen Israel and bring the optimism and hope. So I'm not in the political fray at this time.
All right, thanks for that clarity. Talk to me about the real fears, it seems, that this could become a regional conflict. We know that Hizbollah in southern Lebanon has been raining missiles into Israel. My understanding is that Hamas continues, often intercepted by the Iron Dome, but continues to rain missiles into Israel. There's also concern around something that happened in Syria. How real is the threat that this could become a regional war, do you think?
Well, it's not an insignificant threat. It exists. But we are prepared for this sort of development. We hope Hizbollah doesn't make the mistake, because it would mean the total destruction of Lebanon, and they would bring a calamity upon their own country. So we hope that won't happen, but we're prepared for that. Our focus right now is we want to totally eradicate the Hamas ISIS terror group. We can't have any remnants of it, and it's going to be a very long and protracted military operation. It can go on for months and even more. And so we have the wherewithal for that, economically, militarily, and I have to say that the Israeli nation is stronger and more united than ever. We had this nonsense going on for 10 months of internal strife and quibbling. It's behind us. We're all united, and everyone's fairly determined to beat Hamas and the destroyers.
All right. Your line is breaking up, but I'm going to continue. Let's hopefully we can continue. Do you believe that Benjamin Netanyahu is the right person to lead Israel through this?
You know, he's the prime minister, and it's a democratically elected government, and now it's a unity government. So there's a bunch of folks from both sides of the aisle in the special war cabinet, and I think that's the right mix of people to lead Israel for at this time, and the realistic one.
I think one of the most heartbreaking things that I read about was that a number of the Israelis living in these kibbutzes in southern Israel, which I think has to be, it's clear, it is part of Israel, it's not contested space. A lot of the people were very pro-peace. They got on well with their neighbours in Gaza. They believed in a peaceful solution. They believed in possibly a two-state solution. But nonetheless, they were killed. This extent of violence just tends to polarize everyone. And the tragedy, I think, is that we have seen this happen a number of times, that the moderate voices in Israel and on the Palestinian side often get silenced. And we think of the assassination of Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, you know, just after signing those Oslo Accords, which were trying to set out a roadmap for some sort of peaceful way through this very difficult issue. He was assassinated by a far-right Israeli extremist. Are you concerned that the voices that can make peace happen, potentially, are silenced now?
Well, that's a very important point. I think what all Israelis have learned, right and left.
I'm so sorry, your line's just broken up. Oh, yes, continue. We've got you back.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Yes, if you could start that once again. Yes, please.
What we've learned from this event is that on the other side, Hamas is not a militant organization or a rational player. It's a savage, radical Islamic, barbaric terror organization. Unfortunately, I have to say, and this is a hard truth to hear, Hamas enjoys massive public support in Gaza. 2/3 of Gazans on all polls support Hamas. There were wild celebrations of this massacre among hundreds of thousands, in fact, millions of Gazans. So we're dealing with, in Gaza, a full-blown nation that is very excited about murdering Israeli babies and raping. I'm not saying 100%, but unfortunately it's not a minuscule or insignificant part. And so I don't anticipate peace talks with folks like this.
I want to play you something that I know has caused a great deal of controversy. It's the UN Secretary General Antonio Gutteres speaking yesterday. If we listen to his full clip, then I want to come back and get your comment. Let's just take a quick listen to what he said yesterday.
It is important to also recognize the attacks by Hamas did not happen in a vacuum. The Palestinian people have been subjected to 56 years of suffocating occupation. They have seen their land steadily devoured by settlements and plagued by violence, their economy stifled, their people displaced, and their homes demolished. Their hopes for a political solution to their plight have been vanishing. But the grievances of the Palestinian people cannot justify the appalling attacks by Hamas, and those appalling attacks cannot justify the collective punishment of the Palestinian people.
So I know that there's fury in parts of Israel, that people are saying this man must resign, he simply doesn't get it. But the reality is there's huge context. And certainly someone like me would not understand all the intricacies. It's not just decades, it's centuries, and there's a great deal of pain on many sides. And Hamas is relatively recent if we look back at the history of conflict. So what do you make of his response? Because I think what he says in the last line for me is key as well. The grievances of the Palestinian people cannot justify the appalling attacks by Hamas. And those appalling attacks cannot justify the collective punishment of the Palestinian people. And I want to get your input because it strikes me that this is an opportunity for Israel to say, no, we are not going to continue with this cycle of war. We are going to take the high road. We are going to act as leaders. But just speak to me first about what he said and how you feel about it.
That's like ISIS-type regime. So the talk about peace, and if we're just reasonable and nice enough, is deplorable. These people are not looking for peace. They're not looking for their future. And he's also factually wrong, because Israel left the Gaza Strip in 2005. There's no contested land there. They have no territorial claim because they own 100% of the Gaza Strip. We pulled out all the soldiers. There was no siege whatsoever. Yet from the moment we gave them a full-blown Palestinian state in Gaza with no siege, no limitations whatsoever, they began killing Jews. So this is exactly the epitome of hypocrisy. The Secretary General, shame on him. How could he say that this comes out of vacuum? What vacuum? We gave them the Gaza Strip, for heaven's sake. That's tantamount to saying that the Nazis, we can understand that it came out of vacuum, or Al-Qaeda came out of a vacuum. He would never say that about anyone else, but about the Jewish state. And on this, I would only say shame on him, and the quicker he resigns, the better off we'll all be.
Okay, so let's talk then about the West Bank, which is not run by Hamas, and that's the Palestinian Authority, which it seems to me has its own issues. There are attacks on Palestinians there as well. So it's not all about Hamas. There's clearly something that's not working. And the settlers are encroaching on areas that are meant to be for the Palestinians, as I understand it. So why is Israel doing that? Isn't it a provocative decision to make?
No, in 2005, and actually in Oslo Accords, we exited the cities and towns of the Palestinians. There are no Israelis that live in Ramallah or Nablus or Bethlehem. We don't live in their villages. We don't swarm their villages. There's no soldiers living or walking around their villages unless we know about a specific terror attack that is being prepared to kill Israelis, and then we counter it. So they have their own government. It's called the Palestinian Authority. They vote for their own government if they choose to. And in fact, they elected a majority of Hamas members to their parliament. They pay their own taxes, have their own education system, sewer system, water system, you name it. We don't desire that. We don't desire Gaza. We left Gaza. They could have turned it into Singapore, but they turned it into hell. And at the end of the day, that is their choice, but we have to deal with it. And at this point, we've lost all our patience and understanding of the other side. We, at this point, have to go out and defend our families.
At the same time, there are families being destroyed in Gaza, and I know that you say many of them support Hamas. There hasn't been an election for, I think, some 15 years. I want to speak to you about the humanitarian situation. Now, I know that the Israeli Defense Force said, please, everyone move to the south of Gaza. The reality is it's such a packed area. It's very difficult. Also, Israel says that Hamas shelters in places where civilians stay. The death toll has been appalling. The absolute horror of a mother losing her child, whether she's Jewish or whether she's from Palestine or Gaza, it's the same horror. There are now appeals, and we are seeing some aid crossing the border from Rafah, but even Antony Blinken of the United States is saying, please, can we have a humanitarian pause? They're not even saying ceasefire. But do you think Israel should be considering now, after so much bloodshed on both sides, some sort of humanitarian pause? A high road, if you will.
Well, we are very focused on fighting Hamas and not the civilians. Hence, we created the humanitarian corridors. Every Gazan civilian can go to those corridors and find safe haven. We're focused on the northern part of Gaza. Yes, it is crowded there, but no, people are not dying from just being there. And by the way, we will allow anyone who wants to exit Gaza temporarily to do that and seek refuge, etc.
Where could they exit?
It would be.
Sorry, just to clarify, where can they
Egypt
leave?
and any countries that is.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and the reason.
At the end of the day, I understand that if there's a great desire of the world to embrace the Palestinians, you can temporarily take them while we fight Hamas.
I hear
but we
what
have no
saying.
choice.
I hear you, and I want to just catch up on that. So I spoke to the Egyptian ambassador to South Africa recently, and he said, look, we've got 9 million refugees already. I don't think they'd have too much of a problem. They do have an issue with extremists. But the concern is, once you flatten Gaza, what happens to Gaza? Is the plan for Israel to take Gaza back? Is the plan to try and create some sort of situation with the remaining Palestinians? I mean, what is the game plan around Gaza? Because the fighting is your first response, but where does it go and where does it end?
Well, the main thing that we want to do right now is eradicate Hamas, and later on we can deal with later on. It's like when the world toppled Hitler. So in 1944, no one was asking who'll come after Hitler. This is total and evil, and we have to eliminate it, and we'll deal with that later. Having said that, to your question, no, we don't want to settle Gaza. We have no desire whatsoever. But we do need to clean Gaza off from Hamas, from any remnants of Hamas.
I want you to listen to a clip from a member of our cabinet, Naledi Pandor. She was speaking, I think, at the United Nations yesterday. Just a little context, South Africa is very pro-Palestinian, our president has condemned what happened in Israel unequivocally, but stands very much with the Palestinian people and saying it's very much a form of apartheid, what Israel is doing. So let's just listen to what she said to the UN, and then I'll get a response from you.
The Geneva Convention and its protocols. Both Hamas and the State of Israel have committed these violations.
Both Hamas and the State of Israel have committed these violations. What's your response?
She's reprehensible. What we just heard is simply reprehensible. If she cannot distinguish between deliberate slaughter, rape, murder, burning of families, and versus a country that's defending itself, trying to target Hamas, who holds its citizens and kills them, then she's lost. And if she cares so much about the Palestinians, why doesn't she come and, harbor them while we're fighting Hamas? Shame on her.
Thank you so much for speaking to us tonight. We really do appreciate your views, and it is important to listen and to try and understand, difficult and convoluted as it is. This is a region in terrible pain. That is one thing for sure, with suffering on both sides. Former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennet, Mr. Bennet, of course, served as Prime Minister for a year between June 2021 and 2022. Do stay